Listeners, we know you love Cricket et al., the podcast, and what's not to love, but you can also love us online and read Cricket et al., the Substack experience. Isn't that right, Pete?
That's right. It's a podcast, a website.
It's a way of life. cricketetal.com for all your cricket reading needs. It's Gideon Higgs over here.
Bill Lawler over here.
And welcome to Cricket et al., your independent cricket podcast. It's 3 more sleeps to the Ashes, Pete. Unless you're like me at the moment, who's not sleeping very much, it might be sort of 1.5.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
meth problem or what?
No, it's the anticipation, mate. It's the anticipation. It's killing me. We're crawling up the walls. How much more mindless speculation can we have?
Gideon, you do know that coffee keeps you awake, and I do note that when we had dinner at 10 o'clock on Saturday night in Melbourne, you had a coffee with dinner, and then you were going home for another one. So
I did.
I don't know.
I had a coffee washed down by 4 Valium, and the coffee won. So
coffee won.
Yeah. Anyway,
drugs don't work anymore.
We don't need any more stimulation because even though there's a bit of a dearth of news, and we're pretty much where we were in the news cycle, we don't know either of the teams. We don't know exactly how bad the injuries are. We're kind of marking time. We did think that the opportunity affords itself for a bit of a chat about our Ashes memories, because the Ashes is the rivalry into which we're all born and hopefully will outlive us all, and is often intimately connected with particular parts of your life. Your dawning awareness of how important it is. Your occasional frustrations and irritations with it, but your propensity for always coming back to it. The Ashes is always there. It's always waiting. The minute that it's finished, you're kind of waiting, hanging out for the next one.
Are you old enough to have experienced your first Ashes tours with a radio under the pillow? Transistor.
Look,
I recall doing that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Encouraged by my father.
Yes. The first Ashes I can remember going to, though, was 74-5, which was in Australia. Going to the Melbourne Test match. But you're right. The 75 series I remember was on the ABC, and you got the Test match special coverage. And I wrote that piece recently on Cricket et al. About the morning that it was discovered that the Headingley pitch had been dug up.
Right, yeah.
And that is very vivid in my memory.
Yeah.
And the acknowledgement, you could hear the disbelief in people's voices. This was something that had never happened before, and of course has never happened since. There was a sense in that outrage of just how significant the Ashes were, and how ghastly it was to have them interrupted by external forces. What was your first Ashes, Pete?
And there was that incredible romance. It just came from listening to that sort of crackly radio under your pillow, the plummy British accents, which I wasn't familiar with. I don't know if there were any English living in Bendigo. Not sure they were allowed. Well, I was born a month after the 62-63 series, which is kind of alarming when you go back and you have a look.
Right.
Like there's, you got Ken Barrington and Ted Dexter, Brian Booth, who else was there? Davo, Fred Titmus was playing that too, who later I became aware of. I remember he was always a player I found very curious because Dad told me about his toes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was always
what has 2 toes and spins was the old joke, wasn't
That's
it?
the one.
Yeah.
There's been 32 Ashes series in my lifetime, Gideon. I counted them this morning.
Good stat. Good stat.
But I've only covered 8 of them as a professional cricket writer.
Right. Okay.
This would be my 9th, but I reckon I've attended about 42 Ashes tests in full.
Okay. Right.
4, thereabouts. But been following it for a lot longer. My first memories really are Dennis Lillee coming along.
Yeah, sure.
In that 1970-71 series.
Right.
But I don't have the strongest, I think I was born a news journalist, and the incidents that stick in my mind, that was the tour. I think Melbourne was washed out, wasn't it? They played the first one day from that.
They did.
In that Melbourne test. But I remember, Jon Snow, he really stood out. I remember that incident at the SCG where he bounced Terry Jenner and then the crowd threw cans of beer at him. He was 20 metres in from that. And I even remember the commentary, those wag Australian commentary. The crowd must have been mad. Some of those cans were half full, But what people forget, I had this distinctive memory, and it was when later in that Test match, he went to catch, who was it? Stacky. He went to catch Stacky, who had attempted to hit a six, which is a pretty rare thing in those days. Yeah. And Jon Snow broke his finger on the fence.
On the fence, that's right.
He
on the
got
picket.
Lost in all the other controversy. Got lost so much to the point that I once said to Richie Benno, I had a really strong memory of that. And he said, I don't remember that happening at all. And he actually sat down on his computer and Googled it and said, you're right. Yeah. You are right, young fella. But, that was kind of my earliest. What about you? Australia, of course, lost that series 2-0.
They did. 74-5. I do have a story to do with my very first Test match. I haven't actually looked this up, but I know it pretty well. I went to that first day. Yeah, third Test. Yeah. I can remember many years later, I was at a conference with a colleague of mine from The Australian, in the business section of The Australian, and he was saying that he'd been there on that Boxing Day and he could remember Australia declaring on the first day and sending England in towards the end of the day. And I said, I think you'll find that England batted first. Yeah. And Australia came in at the end of that day. And he said, but I was there. and he'd had a few drinks and he actually said, I will bet you a bottle of Grange Hermitage from that year that Australia batted first and declared. And I said, Mark, don't do this.
Don't do this.
Don't do it. Don't do it. And he did it. And the next morning I came into the office. I photocopied the relevant page from the Wisden Book of Test Cricket and left it on his desk. And the next time I saw him was in the Sydney office of The Australian. I went into editorial conference one day and Mark Westfield walked in and just put in a bottle of Grange Hermitage in front of me to the consternation of everyone else in the conference, which I didn't drink, of course.
What became of that bottle?
We used it at a farewell. A mate of mine was leaving the Oz and I said, look, I've got this bottle. Let's break it open. So to celebrate you leaving The Australian, which is always a great occasion in any journalist's career.
So that's your abiding memory from the Test match, the bottle? Yeah.
Look, my abiding memory is how huge it seemed. Yeah. I was about to turn 9 and everything seemed massive. The MCG seemed massive. Men seemed massive. I seemed tiny in my little seat. Everyone seemed terribly, terribly far away. I can remember at one stage Doug Walters running back from slip to third man to field the ball and kind of running towards us with the perspiration beading on his face and him turning around, turning and throwing the ball back into Rod Marsh, and just it seeming like he'd thrown it forever.
Yes,
it went so far.
The MCG was bigger then, Gideon.
Yeah,
I reckon the stands leant back further.
Yes,
the vantage points weren't as great. It hadn't been fenced in like it is now.
No.
And we were smaller, but there was that sense. I remember going to the 1977 Ashes Test and not, I think I'm just out of primary school. So I'm only half the height of men and remained that way for the next 15 years. And just the scale of everything, of getting on and getting those trams and trains to the MCG and getting off at the station and the crush on the steps. And I just remember this rancid fart at Flinders Street Station being trapped in the crowd. It's a fart that I remember 50 years later. Yeah. And I still remember the guy who did it too. But, and Jon Snow, Bob Willis, Derek Underwood, they all played in that, didn't they? And that's the series where I consummated my love for Dennis Lilly by writing him that letter.
Yes,
and him writing a letter back. I remember lying on my stomach in the lounge room at 26 Clark Street, watching the cricket and writing to Dennis Lilly.
Fantastic. And I saw Lilly get his 6 for 26 in the centenary test, and I remember that very vividly. We were in the Ponsford stand, and the thing that struck me at the time was he seemed to have no one in front of the wicket. He seemed to have this jagged kind of chevron of slips, and I thought, there's no way he can bowl to a field like that. But he did, and batsmen just seemed completely incapable of scoring. He seemed utterly in control. And I can remember Max Walker also yorking Tony Gregg that day to the universal Victorian acclamation. That was an absolutely unforgettable moment.
Was that the first sand shoe crusher?
It was a fantastic delivery. He swung back in, went late.
He wore Dunlop Ollies, didn't he?
Yeah.
Remember? Because Tomo famously targeted them.
Yeah.
I remember the following series, Australia won at 78, 71.
78-9, yep.
England won 5-1. It's the beginning of one of the worst patches of my life. I think England won 4 of 5 Ashes series in my kind of formative years, my adolescence. It was just misery. But I remember the Sydney Test that year. Yallop made 121 from, I've got this written down in front of me, 121 out of 198. It was a fantastic innings. Then Yardley made 61 not out from the 143 that Australia cobbled together in the second innings. So Australia was shit. They were absolutely shit. And England needed 35 to win in the last innings. This is a good trivia question.
And they went out to bowl with an old ball.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. They opened a bowling with an old ball.
Which they weren't allowed to do. The umpires didn't know the laws.
Well, I think it was within the rules at that point, wasn't it?
No, I think they were wrong. And by the time they discovered it was wrong, it was too late to do anything about it. And Boycott got out and he was pissed about it.
He sure was. Well, they opened the bowling with Jim Higgs and Bruce Yardley.
Bruce Yardley, yeah.
Now, that was fantastic for me because that's, you have Craig Sargent. I have Jim Higgs.
You do.
As kids, I was obsessed by Jim Higgs, and I even looked up a little bit of his batting last night. Anyone here who has never seen Jim Higgs bat, please look it up because I don't think you'll ever see anything more inept at such a high level as Jim Higgs with a cricket bat. I mean, it reminded me of that break dancer from the Olympics when Jim had his bats. He's got this kind of Chaplin-esque stance, and he pokes the bat down like it's a stick, but it's as if he doesn't actually understand the physics of batting, of weight transfer or anything like that. His feet are planted, and he kind of waves this feeble wand at the cricket ball. Anyway, the reason I loved Higgs and his batting, of course, wasn't in the Ashes. It was in that fantastic innings with Doug Walters. I think the following year, wasn't it, when he came in at 68.
81. Yeah.
And he helped Doug get his 100 only because they invoked a special rule. You weren't allowed to bounce Jim Higgs.
Lance Cairns bowled him, and he held his gloves up there, and he was out, but the no ball was called.
That's right, because you weren't fast, intimidatory bowling at a hapless batsman was against the rules. Lance Cairns wasn't fast,
could intimidate anyone, really.
Yeah. But I love, you had Dennis Lilly, who was, the sort of hairy-chested lion, but then you kind of was developing an alternative take on my cricket taste at that time, and it was Jim Higgs. We loved Jim Higgs dearly, us Bendigo boys.
And of course, you'd cherish that great stat of his that he went through the entire 1975 tour of England and faced one ball, which dismissed him.
Score a run. He has got a terrible average. I think I wrote it down on a piece of paper.
But it did improve. To be fair to Jim Higgs, for a long time he had more wickets than runs, but eventually the runs did exceed the wickets. So there is evidence of some enhancement over the journey.
In some ways, I'm relieved that your love of Craig Sargent won out over my love of Jim Higgs when it came to pricing for our Substack, because Jim Higgs' highest score from 22 test matches is 16, but from 122 first-class matches, his highest score is 21.
Wow.
It's incredible. You just don't get batting like that anymore.
No, you don't. No. But, yeah, you don't get leg spin like that before. It was a very generous kind of expansive, very loopy leg spin with lots of variations. And Jim is a great thinker on the game. Of course, subsequently served as an Australian selector.
Yeah.
Still a great man to have a conversation with.
I've never met him. I've really? Never met him. No. Right. I'd be overwhelmed.
Would you? I feel it only fair to say that I'm actually catching up with Craig Sargent in Perth, and I'm feeling nervous even now at the prospect of meeting the great man.
I know. Yeah. Do you want me to film it? Should we make a TikTok occasion out of this?
I will be presenting him with a new Craig Sargent T-shirt, which Craig has been kind enough to endorse.
Yeah, which you can buy at the Substack merch store, which is just 2 stalls down from the banana one.
So now, one of the things about Melbourne Test matches, Pete, that you are aware of, maybe not everyone, is that my birthday falls during the Melbourne Test match, usually on the 4th day, the 29th of December. And
MCC usually bakes you a cake.
They are very kind enough to remind me of how old I am. I bear it with as much good grace as I can put together, but it does mean that.
Which isn't much. Yeah.
Do you mean that I did see Shane Warne take a hat-trick on my birthday in 1994?
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds like a song title.
And it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it was one of those sort of miserable last days where you turned up simply to go through the last rites and you're thinking, what on earth can we possibly write about this that hasn't been said 1,000 times before? And Warney, he just was the gift that kept on giving, wasn't he? He always managed to conjure something out of the most unpromising circumstances. And, of course, once he'd bowled those 3 deliveries, once he dismissed Devon Malcolm with that last one, we all knew exactly what we were going to be writing about. And then in 1998, England won on my birthday. They won that Test match by 12 runs, that astounding Test match.
Yeah.
That the first day was completely washed out. And they played extra time for the last 3 days. And the final session, I think I'm right in saying, is the longest session in the history of Test cricket. I think it goes for 3.5 hours because they just decided they had to kind of finish it off. And then, the last few wickets came along and they extended the day's play, and the shadows were falling and the Barmy Army was booming, and England got a victory out of absolutely nowhere. Mark Ramprakash taking that amazing catch to dismiss Justin Langer at square leg, and Dean Headingley bowling a magnificent unfinished spell at the end of that game. I mean, I guess, in some ways, Pete, you probably don't necessarily agree with me about this, but it has been England victories that have probably been a bit more memorable over the journey because they have been rarer.
Yeah.
They have often been against the general trend in competition and the general ascendancy. You think of Headingley 01, Edgbaston 05, Oval 09, Headingley 19, Headingley 23. I mean, maybe the most memorable Australian victories are those that we saw in 23 when they came back on the last day in 2 of those Test matches.
See, the foundation, sort of the foundation slab of my cricket is just full of the bones of Australian cricketers and failed campaigns. That 4 out of 5 campaigns, and which, of course, went hand in hand with losing to New Zealand, and just every time I looked up, Australia were losing. So it kind of, that's what embedded in my memory very much around cricket. So I never took an Australian victory for granted after that. For some time after that. These days, I'm a little more blasé about it, and a little less invested, really, because I'm only barracking for the yarn.
Exactly.
Yeah. Everyone loves the 82-83 Boxing Day Test.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
With that fantastic partnership between AB and Tomo. It was great. It was a great series, that one. Jeff Lawson. I think Dennis Lilly only played 1 Test.
He did.
Tomo played, I think, 4 out of the 5. But Jeff Lawson dominated. He took 34 wickets at 20 in that series. Yeah. You sometimes forget how good a bowler Jeff Lawson was. But it was the last day, wasn't it? That famous, well, it started the night before when Tomo joined AB at the wicket. They were 218. They needed, about 70 odd
74, I think, yeah. And they put on 37 that night and they came back needing 37 the next day.
I think they needed 37. Yeah, they needed 37 the next day. But, of course, 10,000 people showed up. That game could have been over in one delivery. England only needed one ball. And, God, I just remember every single – and that slow motion car crash of the ball flying to Slips and bouncing out of the Slips' hands. Remember?
Cristavero's hands.
Yes. But you thought, we live. No, we don't.
Yeah,
we die. It's the hope that kills you.
I can remember that morning. I was in Geelong, my hometown.
I was in Bendigo.
And I was so nervous that I refused to turn on the TV or listen to the radio. I went for a walk in Geelong trying to avoid what was happening. And yet every time a car went past, I could hear the commentary coming through the car radio.
With the Doppler effect.
I've just got to give this up. And I remember going to my grandmother's flat and turning on her giant radiogram. She wasn't there. She had one of those radiograms with the phonogram and the radio.
Yeah.
And twiddling it on. And I reckon that was the summer that I think 3DB was doing the test matches and Harry Beitzel was calling them.
Harry Beitzel?
Harry Beitzel was calling them. And I reckon it was Harry Beitzel who I heard calling that final wicket.
Right.
I'm going to need to go and check this out.
We wouldn't have got 3DB in Bendigo. They wouldn't have transmitted that far. We only got 3BO and 3. What's funny? There's nothing funny about that.
Okay, all right.
It's Bendigo. It's an abbreviation of Bendigo.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
Bendigo. Yeah. No, and the ABC. And I think we got 3CB as well. But anyway, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
We're going to move into the press. I'm moving into the press box now. I'm in the press box for the 06-07 series.
Yes.
MCG wasn't much of a game. England were awful. Tour had become a bit of a joke. Do you remember that, as a news journal, I remember this, that England's game plan for the Boxing Day test had been discovered by the Australian team. And England were up in arms because they said that their dressing room had been robbed, that Australia as hosts were shamed by this event, that the MCC needed to launch an inquiry into it, and they were furious about this. But the truth was that they'd actually left them in a photocopier in an office in the
Could
MCC.
happen to anyone, couldn't it?
Could have. So obviously they're going away with that. Who was it? That Matthew Hogarth did the press conference, and it all become very serious and bullshit. And he announced that, yes, there was going to be an inquiry and they appointed Mrs. Marples. She was on the case. And if she didn't solve it, they were going to get Sherlock Holmes back and see how he went. More appropriate if they got Inspector Clouseau, to be honest with you. But Warne had got his 699th wicket in Perth.
And,
it was Monty Panesar.
Yep.
And so he took his 700th wicket in the second session and Boxing Day, wasn't it? I think it was the second session.
Yeah, bowling Andrew Strauss. Yep.
Beautiful delivery. One of those ones, wasn't it? That dipped and swerved and spun and did all those things that a Shane Warne delivery said. And I remember saying to Crash Craddock, people will sort of reminisce about where they were when Warney took his 700th wicket and what they were doing. And I know exactly what I was doing. I was making a note in my notebook and thought, what the hell's all that noise about? Because it was a god-awful noise. It shook the ground. And Warney said later, and a few of the other players said, they'd never heard a sound like it when he took that 700th wicket. Yeah, he was in full swagger, that series.
It's funny, isn't it? The things that you miss. Now I'm thinking about things that I might have missed by being absent from my post at various times. I do remember that last day at Headingley in 2019, Pete.
Oh, don't.
Where we were up against deadline, and there was you basically had a story lined up to announce Australian victory to the Oz, but he just kept getting staved off and staved off and staved off.
They kept pushing back the deadline.
They were pushing back the
midnight on our deadline, which is ridiculous, you know. And then it got past that. That was killing me.
And it wasn't the state
you were
so nervous that you just watched one Ali G video after another.
Was it Ali G that I was watching at the time? Yeah. I seem to remember watching some Larry Sanders as well, to be honest with you. Anything. Yeah. I was just so tense. It was the first time I'd ever filed a story predicting – I just had to.
Yes.
Predicting an outcome. And naturally I predicted an Australian win. So then I was terrified that somebody would push the wrong button and that would make its way into the newspaper, and you would have one of those infamous situations where someone had got it completely fucking wrong. You know, you're at the hands of some very tired subs at that point. Yes. But the backbench of the Australian looked after me, as they always did. Thank God for them.
And you're at the hands of the fates, aren't you? Yeah. You know, we're old and gnarly now, but there are still those moments where you just feel like you're just a fan again.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of been taken out of your hands, and you just might as well sit there and let it wash over you and enjoy it.
Some of that last sessions just will be forever burned on my mind. I remember that the run out. Remember the Nathan Lyon run out?
Yeah.
The LBW that wasn't given, but just Ben Stokes cracking that ball and the response of the crowd. It was an incredible test match to be at.
Yeah. And backing himself to hit over the fielders who were on the fence. It just was just completely self-belief came out of every pore. And you remember he'd run out Joss Butler. There'd been a terrible misunderstanding, and clearly Stokes blamed himself, and it just seemed to stiffen his resolve even further. He just seemed to draw everything into himself.
Batted very slowly early in that.
He did,
very slowly before throwing the liver to baseball. I'm going back to 06, 07 because, you know, those first tours that you cover as a journo, you really remember strongly. And this is, of course, in Perth, and everybody remembers this. I remember that for some reason, people were starting to question Adam Gilchrist's place in the side. I was being in a wine bar in Perth the night before with the Wisden editor, who confidently announced that after he'd made a fourth ball duck, Monty Panesar had got him in the first innings. Confidently announced, it's over for Adam Gilchrist. I mean, really, this is the end of days for Adam Gilchrist. And I kind of scoffed and said, look, every Australian knows that Adam Gilchrist is a couple of shots away from, you know, an incredible innings. Don't you worry about Adam Gilchrist. I think it was, so I remember actually being right for once in my life, because that innings in a second. I mean, and you know, the funny thing is he only hit 4 sixes. It felt like he hit 40.
Yes.
And it felt like he destroyed Monty Panesar, but it was only 2 overs that Monty Panesar bowled after the break. But, you know, Gilchrist was hitting with the doctor. I think
with the doctor, exactly.
He hit 3 sixes and a 4 to finish off 1 over, and all the sixes were kind of sitting up on the breeze and then landing on top of the Barmy Army down there on the other side of the fence. It was quite the innings. It was quite entertaining.
It wasn't, to be fair, the greatest England attack of all time. You had Sarge Mahmood bowling to him. I saw it, and I think Kevin Peterson even bowled a few overs. So they did give the opportunity for Gilly to get back into the game. But he, as you say, 100 off 48 deliveries.
Mate, he came
over in the blink of an eye.
I think they were 350 when he came in. It was a free hit.
Sure,
and he was actually very lucky not to be caught first or second ball, remember? He hit one just wide of gully.
Yeah. A moment that I remember from the Perth Test match in 2013, I mean, you remember how outstanding Mitchell Johnson was that summer, what an absolute force of nature he was. The ball, though, that I remember from that series is the one that Ryan Harris bowled to Alistair Cook.
I know it.
First ball of that second innings.
Wow.
I just could watch it over and over again. It's almost my candidate for the ball of the 21st century.
I think it's one of the most perfect ball deliveries ever bowled. Yeah. Not assisted by anything devious in
no.
Perfect pitch.
No. If you look closely, it misses the crack. It just does it. It just does it off the seam. And I mean, really, no batsman on earth could have played it. To get it in that place, first up, absolutely unbelievable. And it was indicative of the kind of the mastery that Australia retained in that series. They lost in England in 2013. They lost 3-0. That's pretty astounding. But by the time Australia got back home and Mitchell Johnson, you could begin to hear him sort of pouring at the end of his run. You sensed a kind of a change in the trajectories of the two teams.
It was a brutal series, wasn't it? Yeah, it was something else. I'm going back to the 06-07 one more time, just for the Adelaide Test match.
Yep.
An incredible Test match. Like England, 6 for 5-5-1 declared in the first innings. But at the end of the first day, they were 3 for 266. And I might have said this before. Malcolm Conn, I'd love to go back and find his report.
I remember.
Said, England have found a new way to lose. They have bored themselves to a loss and, just because they hadn't scored. And it seems the most outrageous thing to say of all time to say. They had got themselves into a good position. Clearly, they were on their way to 650. Collingwood was on his way to 200. Peterson made 150. He kicked, I think Warren took one from 160 from 50 odd overs. And I just remember everybody saying, Malcolm, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Guess what? He was right. Yeah. And that bowling effort by the Australians, everybody remembers what Warren did, how he kind of willed them over the lines. But I will never forget the Brett Lee over. It was the 39th over of the innings. I was standing on the camera gantry.
Yep.
At Adelaide, watching from behind the bowler's arm as he bowled this 5 beautiful deliveries to Flintoff, all of them moving around. I think the 4th or 5th, Flintoff had a dip at and then you thought, that's the next one's coming in, the next one's coming in, the next one's coming in. So did Flintoff. Guess what? It didn't. It went away again, but Flintoff was committed to playing to it, nicked off, and it was a great, great piece of bowling. And I just had the perfect vantage point for it.
I can remember running into Terry Jenner when Australia began their chase in the second innings, and Jenner saying, "They'll never get these. They'll never get these because that guy Giles will start bowling over the wicket into the rough, and they just won't be able to." It was just like no one could believe exactly what Australia was going to achieve that day.
No, it was the most unbelievable turnaround in a Test match. Maybe 2001, Calcutta.
Yeah, maybe
rivals it. Maybe I don't know, but I never really understand how England lost that one. And of course, Warney got his revenge. Remember he pitched outside leg.
He did
to KP for that whole of that first innings. It was shit cricket, frankly. KP was kicking them away. For God's sake, mate! And then he bowled him around his legs for a duck, I think, in the second innings, wasn't it?
For 2, I think.
2, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry, KP. I'll give you those 2 runs back, mate. Yeah.
I think KP having actually given an interview where he said there was absolutely no way that Warren could get him out bowling around the wicket.
Oh gosh!
He said it couldn't be done.
I've got one more. Have you got any more?
No, go on. I'm all ears. Yep, go on.
Well, look, I haven't really included any of our tours to England. It's you and me.
Yes. Yep.
2019. You were in England in 2019.
I was. Yeah.
That series for me, it was really special. It was a really special series to write about, particularly for the return of Steve Smith. I mean, what he achieved in that first innings in Birmingham, the incredible pressure and scrutiny and just the relentless abuse that he and Warner were copying. I mean, Bancroft played that test too, didn't he? But it was all focused on Warner and on Smith.
Do you remember the gauntlet they had to run to the team bus?
Yes, I do.
It was just astounding that was allowed to happen. Really, I thought England should have been ashamed of themselves. It was actually a foretaste of the way in which some of the English crowds behaved in 2023.
It was vile, and they were behind those. They were behind the team had to walk, through that sort of off the bus and then through the crowd. I mean, at least they had barriers, but then they would get on the bus, and the team would those supporters would actually follow the bus as far back to the team hotel as they could. The Aussies took it well.
Yeah,
it goes to my point about how you approach a tour and they laughed at it, and I think they genuinely sort of found a way to find this abuse amusing and to deflect it. Warner pulling his pockets out to the crowd to prove that there was no sandpaper in it. Like, you had to roll with the punches, didn't you? Otherwise, they were going to take you down. But he made that pair of hundreds in that Test match were the 144 and 142 were fantastic. The 92 at Lord's, all the drama of that. Then he misses the next Test. He gets the double 100 at Manchester and an 82. It's an 80 and a 23 at the Oval. So only once was he dismissed for less than 80
when
he batted in that. Yeah, he had an average of 110. But also, one that dips me lid, and I've said this before, pardon me if I say it again, and if you hang around, I'll say it again sometime down the track. Warner too. Was it really impressive on that tour? He averaged 9.5. Yeah. He made 95 runs, 61 of them in a single innings.
I remember. Yeah. Yep.
And you remember we went back after the first innings in Birmingham. We ran into him in the bar of that hotel, and he announced that he was the king of the second innings. He was sitting on his bar stool like it was his throne.
Yeah.
And he went, and I think he made 8 in the second innings, and he had it was the shittest tour any opener has ever had in the history of Test match cricket.
But he always showed willing. He developed a lot of respect for him on that tour. Yeah,
and every single one of his teammates said you didn't detect any change in his demeanour at all.
Yes.
He was indomitable, Dave. He didn't let it sort of, and if you let it affect you, it affects your teammates as well. And I mean, his form cost other people their place in the side to some degree.
Yeah,
the selectors stuck with him, and it was a mistake in the end. But well done, David.
Yes, indeed. I was listing them this morning, and I realised that I've actually been present for 9 of the last 11 Ashes series in England, because I was over there as a tourist in 85 and 89. And in those days, it was actually quite not difficult to get a ticket to go to a Test match. I remember 85. I went to the first day at Headingley. It was for my first day of Test cricket in England, and I can remember Andrew Hilditch getting 100. But I can particularly remember the Hammond Sauceworks band that played at lunchtime, and thinking, what a fantastic idea. They should do more of this in Australia. I can remember buying myself a pint of Newcastle brown ale.
Oh, the old
19 at that stage, but it seemed like I could, feign a Yorkshire accent and put on a flat cap. I was totally assimilated.
Good beer, that, actually.
Good beer.
Yeah.
89, I saw Gower get 100 at Lord's.
Nice.
I got a ticket off Michael Davey, the former editor of the of the Melbourne Age. And the next time I was back was in 2001, which I reported for the Guardian. One of those, and of course the last time that Australia won a series in England, and I was kind of relied upon to be the Guardian's Australian voice, and it actually wasn't all that difficult. All they had to do was constantly explain, they're just very good, just very, very good.
Oh, yeah, they're just it's kind of an Australian thing, isn't it? We're just very good at cricket, and you're not.
but of course, I'm born in England and raised in Australia, so I do feel as though I've got a foot in both camps, and I do root in general for the yarn, as you say, and I root for Test cricket. Nothing would please me more than if this series went down to the last Test match 2-2, and it wouldn't really matter at that point who won the decider.
Raining on the 5th day in Sydney, we need 25. Well, I caught you wearing English socks covering
indeed.
cricket. Was there something going on there? You were most annoyed. You got really annoyed at me that I took a photo of your socks. I don't think we were working together then. But one horror moment, of course, 2015. I did the 2015 tour, and I was there in Nottingham when Stuart effing Broad took 8 for 15.
Oh,
wow, that's a memory. And it's a car crash memory because by the second day of that test match, the second night after the second day of that test match, Ben Horn and I were out for dinner somewhere in Nottingham, probably at Yeoli Trip to Jerusalem pub, when we heard rumour that Michael Clark was about that he'd been told to step down. Was the rumour. And so the dark streets of Nottingham, sort of wandering from pub. So we went back pub to pub looking for people, and we went back to the team hotel because we'd heard that Michael was in the bar. But when we got there, he'd left, and only Warney was in the bar of is it the Jurors Inn or something like that? No, not the Jurors Inn. That's the place where we were staying. And he really didn't want a bar of us. Like, he just gave us a dirty look when we came out. And we didn't nail the yarn down. I do remember by that stage I was I was 50 Theakston's Old Peculiars in. Have you ever had a Theakston's Old Peculiar, Gideon? No. Oh, it's so great. It's a shame that you can't allow one. If you ever allow another beer in, try a Theakston's Old Peculiar. It's a great beer. Peculiar is spelt with an E.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I can remember Clark being a very interesting study on that tour. I can remember the first press conference of that tour at Cardiff.
Yep.
And I hadn't been on the West Indies tour, which Australia had just come from. I hadn't really seen Clark since the World Cup final.
He wasn't in a good place.
He was in a terrible place. And I can remember the look in his eyes. He had these incredibly dead eyes. And the things that he said had a kind of a coldness, almost the quality of an automaton. If you'd read the transcript, that wouldn't have been obvious. But I can remember turning to Greg Baum, who was sitting next to me, and saying, "Geez, he's gone.
Yeah, he was
He's gone. He's just not there anymore."
Yeah, and he kind of retreated into his own space. I think we didn't see him out very often. Like, it was very unusual that he had been seen in the bar that night.
Yes,
so I think he was living in his room, and I think constantly consulting Warney, who was trying to his life support system around that period of his captaincy. But it wasn't a good series. And I recall that him when he retires at the Oval, walking off in front of the gasometer when it was empty. Have you seen the gasometer lately?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. No, they've built apartments in it.
Ah, right. Yes. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Which is, at least they haven't pulled it down, but nonetheless, I did like the empty gasometer. I like an absence.
Well, Clark actually handled his retirement, I thought, very well. I thought he was very dignified. There were often occasions where you felt quite critical of Clark, but I thought he was very gracious in the circumstances.
I think you wrote at the time that it was hard to tell whether a test career had finished or a television career had started. Because remember, he made the announcement to his future employers on the boundary before telling anybody else. And in fact, Ben and I broke the story the following day. I wrote it in a cubicle of the toilets, if you really need too much detail, because the curries had got me. And I got a detail wrong. But we'd filed just as play started, that Michael Clark was going to step down at the end of the day. It was news to the Australian team. He hadn't told the Australian team, and he hadn't told the press officer. So there was no response to it.
I was sitting next to you, Pete. You weren't
sitting next to me when I wrote it.
No, I wasn't. But I was certainly sitting next to you as the responses came in and the denials added up.
But I made a terrible error. I in a panic, like in that sort of haste, I'd written that he'd been told to resign. And Warren never forgave me for that. Warren was furious about that. He publicly denounced me, actually, because he was very close to Michael. Took it. Well, he did. I think he was forgiving me later in his life, but by that stage, the damage was done between Shane and I.
There is also such a thing as very boring Ashes cricket. We should be fair about this. There is a lot of procedural Ashes cricket. The last 2 summers out here have been very disappointing. You've been kind of scrambling desperately, for anything to say, because there is a limit to the number of times you can say how awful England is. So, we're both enthused by the prospects of this England team this summer. I think Australia will probably end up being too strong in their own conditions, but it's going to be closely contested. And we saw in 2023, when these England players are at their best, they're a thrilling team to watch, and they will take the contest up to Australia this summer.
Gideon, the first Ashes test played in my lifetime. 5 matches were played. There was a result in one of them.
Yeah.
How things have changed. Those were the bad old days, weren't they?
Yeah. Have you seen a great draw, Pete? Memorable draws in our experience. I guess that Sydney Test match in 2022, was it?
England have pulled off a few.
Bairstow got that 100. Memory. Yeah, that was pretty good. It went down to the last over.
I have, but I'd have to do some research. I don't mind a draw. I mean, a draw can be as exciting as a sort of last wicket, last delivery victory, whatever. Games always end on the last delivery, don't they?
Edgbaston Test in 2009, that was a draw. But I remember that Test match in particular because I found out that my wife was having a daughter. Oh. So we had our 20-week ultrasound in Birmingham the day before the Test match, and the obstetrician said, "Do you want to know what sex it is?" And we decided that yes, we were going to find out. And he said it's going to be a girl, and I was just absolutely thrilled to bits. That's exactly what I'd always wanted.
Pretty good news, hey?
Crappy Test match, but a great personal moment.
How old is she now?
She's about to turn 16.
I see. Yeah.
That's probably all we've got time for, Pete. I reckon
that was rambly, wasn't it?
That was very rambly and very self-indulgent.
If you've hung around till this long,
if you're still there, thanks very much for being part of this random walk down memory lane. We'll be back into present tense when we get to Perth in a couple of days.
Tense,
and we're looking forward very much to your company this summer on Cricket et al., both on the podcast and on cricketetal.com. If you're not a subscriber yet, you really, really should be. Don't miss it all.
Now is the time to subscribe, because we are going to be filing furiously from here on in.
Absolutely.
On the knocker. Old school. We file on the last delivery.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's good night from him.